All of that and more. Now, my next guest is Dr. Jeffrey Barke, whose introduction I just now gave you. Dr. Barke, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Sage, thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
All right, Doc. We've had been 3 weeks since the latest lockdown took effect, and our cases are higher than they've ever been. In fact, we are now ground zero of all the 50 states for COVID-19. What does that say?
Well, that's cases, Sage. That's cases. That's not illness. So
Right.
California is number 40 in mortality, but we are number 1 in testing. So we do more testing than any other state. And so it's a very, very different between cases and illness.
And the more you test, the more cases you get.
We're testing over 2 million people a day. Compare that to last March, April, May, where we were testing somewhere in the 200 to 300,000 range. Now we're testing 2 million. And I can't do the math, but if the testing is, let's say, 2% false positives, 2% of a million, that's a lot of people that are testing positive but don't actually have the illness.
Mm-hmm. What does your gut tell you, Dr. Barke, about the percentage of Americans who have already contracted the coronavirus? 5%, 10%, 20%? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's higher than that, because I'm seeing patients that were ill last year and pretty ill, and they come in and we do antibody testing, and they're positive for that. I don't know what the actual number is, but I'd guess it's more in the 40% range. So this is really common. It's a respiratory illness, and what I mean by that is it's spread by respiratory droplets, primarily from people that are ill, that are coughing and sneezing. There is little evidence that there's much asymptomatic spread going on.
And when you're asymptomatic, of course, you don't know you are.
No, you don't. And, you know, the British Journal of Medicine recently reported evidence of asymptomatic spread is insufficient to justify mass testing for COVID-19, and I agree with them.
Mm-hmm. What's your current take on masks?
Current take on masks is they have very little efficacy. This has been studied over and over and over again in the past, but we ignore the past, and we put together anecdotal evidence now to support mask use. And I think to mask the healthy population is just not warranted scientifically. If you're ill and you're coughing and sneezing, certainly having a mask on can reduce the respiratory secretions that come out of your mouth and potentially spread. But to mask the healthy population, in my opinion, doesn't make sense.
I'm talking with Dr. Jeffrey Barke. Dr. Barke, literally hours ago, Joe Biden just gave a speech in which he pretty much trashed the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus. He ended the speech by saying, wear a mask.
Yeah. Well, I think he actually looks better in a mask, so it would be appropriate for him. You know, Sage, I heard you say earlier that there's a lot about the coronavirus, and in particular this new coronavirus that has come out. And you're right, we don't know a lot about it, and we have a lot to learn, but we do know a lot about some of our elected officials that are not basing their decisions on science. Our own governor in California, for example, that just announced there'll be an additional 3-week lockdown of our economy. There's no science to support that. I think it's wrong. It's tyrannical. It causes more harm than good. And so we should focus on that rather than the fear-mongering that we see coming out of the mainstream media.
Give me your take on these 2 vaccines, soon to be a 3rd vaccine. By what time do you think we will resume to something resembling normalcy?
That's a good question. Well, if we actually use the vaccines appropriately, I think it would be sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, we're not doing that. We know crystal clear by CDC's own statistics who's at risk for this virus, and it's not the young and the healthy people. And unfortunately, time and time again, we're seeing a lot of this vaccination going to younger people. Even in my own community, I got an email that I was I was eligible to get a vaccination because I'm a healthcare worker, I'm a physician. I declined because I think these vaccination should be going to those that are at highest risk.
Doctor, we're going to take a break right here. Don't go away. Dr. Jeffrey Barke is my guest. 888-971-SAGE. Call in with your COVID-19 questions.